want you on my mind. Don't want you on my mind.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Emily Sumner, and I'll be your host. I am pleased to be with you on behalf of the SEL Exchange hosted by Castle. Before I share a little bit more about the SEL Exchange, I'm going to go through a few quick tips to help the webinar go smoothly for you. We do have the chat open, and I see many of you are already sharing greetings with the group, so feel free to continue to share any thoughts or ideas you have throughout the presentation in the chat. We also have a few activities to engage you in, and you can also use the chat feature to participate in those. If you have any technical problems during the webinar, you can use the chat to reach out to me, and I'll do my best to resolve the problem for you. One thing you can do right now to make sure that your audio and video stay strong is to close all the other programs on your computer. So other internet browser tabs, Word, PowerPoint, Adobe applications. This just ensures all of your internet and computer bandwidth goes to power Zoom. If you do have temporary blips in your connection that don't smooth out within a few seconds, you can log out of Zoom and come right back in, and that often just resets everything for you. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions throughout today's presentation, and we are holding time at the end of the webinar for a Q&A period with our panelists. To ask the questions, locate the Q&A icon on your toolbar and type your question in there. I'll get it and I'll put it into the queue to be answered during that Q&A period at the end. We are recording today's webinar, and we will email you a link to that recording along with your certificate of attendance. So keep an eye on your inbox probably tomorrow or at the latest Friday. All right, now I'd like to share just a little bit about the Social and Emotional Learning Exchange, which is hosted by Castle each year. This is a unique and timely forum for those who are committed to social and emotional learning. Last year, nearly 2,500 people from around the globe joined the virtual summit, and these included researchers and practitioners, as well as young people and community leaders. This year's virtual summit is going to be held on October 14th, and will offer 4 hours of learning centered around how you can activate SEL to create conditions where young people can find their sense of purpose and channel their strengths towards achieving personal and collective goals. We're going to be opening registration next week, so keep an eye out for that. If you haven't signed up already to receive a notification about registration, go over to selexchange.castle.org, and we'll put that URL in the chat right now. And you can sign up to be notified for when registration opens, as well as ongoing updates about the summit. I'd like to acknowledge the generous support provided by organizations that are making a difference with SEL. Our more than 20 sponsors are dedicated to advancing SEL through innovative products and programs. Today, I want to give an extra thank you to PureEdge Inc., who is sponsoring today's webinar. PureEdge builds partnerships with school districts, academic research institutions, and government entities to influence the national conversation around the impact of health and wellness on children, to develop policies that make health and wellness an essential component of the education system. PureEdge has offered their platform today to Wayfinder, so I am now going to invite the Wayfinder team to join us and to kick off our conversation about the connection between belonging and student empowerment. Welcome, Brandy and Tristan. And good to see you, Corinn.
How you doing?
I will let you all take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for all of the helpful information. And we all want to just kind of reiterate a thank you to PureEdge for their sponsorship of this, for gifting us this space to share with you all our work, and for the support of their team, particularly Chi, who has been an amazing advisor to Project Wayfinder for quite a few years now. And we've learned so much from her. So wanted to make sure that we just kind of gave them a shout out as well. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brandy Arnold. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Chief Learning Officer for Project Wayfinder. So I'm so excited to be with you all today to be able to share a little bit about our work and to talk about kind of belonging in general and how we can work to cultivate that for our students. I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Tristan, as well, to introduce himself.
Hey, everyone. My name is Tristan Love. I am the Director of Learning and Engagement at Project Wayfinder, and I am completely stoked to be here with you all today to share in this space and this experience with you all. And hopefully at the end of this webinar, you all walk away feeling more prepared, more connected, and more knowledgeable on how we can continue to do this work.
Thank you, Tristan. And a really exciting thing for me is that prior to starting with the team at Project Wayfinder, I actually taught the curriculum for 2 years. and the purpose curriculum. And it's really exciting to me to have a former student on the panel with us today as well. So I want to give Corinn a moment to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Corinn. I'm one of Brandy's old students. I graduated last year with Brandy, and I'm super excited to share my experience with the Wayfinder program and help you guys answer questions and navigate this program.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Corinn. We are so excited, as Tristan said, to be on with you all today. And one of the things about Project Wayfinder is that we always encourage with our educators, with our staff, with all of our students that engage with the curriculum is to show up as your authentic selves, to bring your full self into every space, and for that full self to not only be accepted, but to be valued and celebrated. So before we ever get into anything, one thing to know about Wayfinder is that we're big proponents of creating space and how we can do that. And I know that we're in a virtual space together today, but we wanted to give you all a moment before we even start to talk about who we are and what it is that we do. We wanted to give a moment to just check in, just to see how are we all doing today. I know there's a lot of folks in the room, and we want to hear from each and every one of you. And obviously, if we were all in a physical space together, if we were able to do that, we could, kind of look eye to eye and form those connections. But even so, we'd like to create an opportunity to just check in and see how we're all doing today. And one of the ways that Project Wayfinder does that is through what we call our welcome rituals. So one of them today is just a quick check-in on how you're doing through a metaphor of weather. So giving a quick weather report. And one way that I'd like to do this, and Tristan brought this idea, and I just loved whenever I see him do this. One way I'd like to do this is through a waterfall. And so just take a couple moments, think about how you're doing, think about what your weather report might be. And you can even go ahead and start typing it in the chat, but don't hit send quite yet. What we'd like to do is just see a waterfall of weather reports, just a cascade of weather reports showing up in the chat all at once. We want to release any sort of preconceived notions you have about who else in the room is going to report on what. And again, we want you to feel that you can kind of be honest and bring your full self. And if you're a little stormy today, that's okay. We understand that. That is life. That is the world that we are in. That is the stress that we're all encountering in our different life events. And so we'd really love for you to kind of just bring that authenticity to the chat. And so as you're thinking about it, and again, you can even start typing it, but don't hit send quite yet. We will never ask you to do anything that we won't do. And we're big proponents of leading in vulnerability. And so Tristan, Corinn, and I will each share out a little quick weather report ourselves before we ask you to hit send on your weather report. And so for me, I would say that I'm the calm in the middle of the storm. Wayfinder is super excited. We're supporting all of our schools right now as they launch. Our team especially is wrapping our arms around them and supporting them in implementation. And it's a lot going on, but right now I'm really centered here with you all and excited to be in this space with you. So that's my weather report. How about you, Tristan?
Right now, I am live and direct from Houston, Texas, and it is hot and humid with the beginning of the school year, hurricane brewing in the Gulf of Mexico. But afterwards, it looks clear for the next few weeks. Back to you, Brandy.
Thank you, Tristan. And I'm going to kick it back over to Corinn for her weather report as well. Oh, Corinn, it looks like you're still on mute. I do that all the time.
I am super bright and sunny. It's super bright and sunny outside. Can't complain that I'm complaining today. I wonder if you guys can hear my birds chirping.
We can, and it's definitely relaxing.
We can.
I feel like I'm in the middle of nature right now.
Right.
So great to hear that you're sunny, Corinn. All right, y'all. So as you've had a moment to think about your weather reports, go ahead and start typing those in the chat. So we'll give you just a minute to type. And when I give you the signal, go ahead and drop them. 1, 2, 3, go. Drop those weather reports.
Oh, wow. This is amazing.
Oh, I love it.
I love it.
I see some rainbows, some tropical breezes.
Right.
We have some wind, to be sure.
Rainbows, cool and calm.
Yeah, sunny and hot, cloudy but hopeful. Oh, wow.
Right.
These are beautiful. Calm after a long, long storm. Thank you, Julie. I love that. Chilly but refreshing. Thank you all so much for dropping those. Those were absolutely beautiful to see. And we're just so grateful for your participation as we get started. Tristan, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, this is just amazing. I when someone says tropical breeze, I automatically, I felt it. I felt
Mhm.
like I was there. But man, this is amazing. Thank you all for participating and doing that reflection. And as you can see, we're all in different spaces and we all have different weather reports. And coming into this space like that, that's okay to be in that space that you're in. But just know that you are valued and we welcome you to share out as much as you like, or if it's something that you really don't feel like sharing, then don't. And so, but just be comfortable. We're glad you are in this space with us, and hopefully you're comfortable, feel comfortable to, share out.
That's fantastic and such a great reminder. One of the things we are always proponents of as well is voice and choice. So voice and choice of our students in terms of participation and the things that they share, and as our and participants in any trainings that we're doing. So just know as we ask for participation today, that as Tristan said, there's we encourage you to kind of push yourself if you're not usually someone who participates on these webinars, these type of webinars. But if there's something that you want to hold and just individually reflect on, that's okay too. All right, so before we get started with our panel discussion, I'll talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. So you're probably wondering like, oh, they already are asking us to participate and do all these things, and I'm not even quite sure what it is that they do. So we are an SEL curriculum. We are based in the Bay Area, founded at the Stanford K-12 lab. And our founder also calls us a human development curriculum, which I really love and has really resonated with me because we are, we take the SEL and we take all of the frameworks, and we've worked really diligently to align our work to the Castle core competencies. And we've really wrapped that around some of these bigger questions around what does it mean to move through adolescence? So we are geared toward middle school and high school students, and where our curriculum supports students in wrestling with some of these big questions that they have as they move through their middle school and high school years. And that really came from our founder, who was a teacher and an educator and youth development program manager in the Bay Area. And he really found that there weren't a lot of opportunities for youth to kind of explore these big questions and to think about their identity and what their passions are and what their values are and how they want to contribute to the world around them. And so through an opportunity to incubate what was going to be Wayfinder at the K-12 lab, he was able to really build this amazing curriculum that we've been able to push out to schools across the country and actually internationally for the last 6 years. We're founded, much of our curriculum is rooted in a metaphor, which is wayfinding. So we know that for thousands of years, our ancestors did not have a map. They did not have GPS that they could easily pull up on a phone. They didn't even have phones, right? So we know for thousands of years that our ancestors traversed the earth and they didn't have a map. What they used was what was available to them, what was around them. They built these skills to find their way even without a map. So they used the placement of the sun and the stars and waves and wind and animal prints and all of these things that they were able to build up their toolkit to navigate the world around them. And so that's the metaphor that we use. We say that just because there's no map to a destination in life, that does not mean that we can't help students learn skills and build tools to find their way, to navigate through the complexity. We know that the world is complex, but we want students to not only feel like they have a place within it, so that's definitely that belonging piece, but that they have agency and the skills to navigate that complexity, that they can move through the world and feel like they're moving purposefully and that they're doing things that are meaningful to them and that they're not just checking off boxes, because we know that the world just doesn't work that way. And what we don't want is for students to graduate from high school and kind of be feeling a little lost and feeling like, now that I don't have that structure of things that I need to be doing each day, that's when that really inner intrinsic motivation and that agency comes into play. And we really want to boost that for students across the board. And we know that students are facing many things that those of us who are a little bit further away from high school never had to face before. And as namely a pandemic, right? We have so many students that are navigating school through a pandemic, and they are struggling. We know that we hear lots of things from our students each and every day. Our curriculum is rooted not only in the best practices research of academics, but also the boots on the ground folks who are teaching in classrooms every day and the students themselves. We want to elevate their voice throughout the entire process of creating our curriculum. And these are some of the things that we hear from students. And to be clear, this is not the only thing that we're hearing from students. We're definitely hearing positives. And one of the most beautiful things, I think, is that often one of the most positive things that we hear is that when students have that caring adult in their classroom or in their school, that person that they feel like they can connect with, that understands them, that they can go to when they need support or have questions, that makes the difference for them. And I think that's one of the most beautiful positive things that I hear from students so often. But we also hear these things, right? I don't know who I want to be versus who I'm supposed to be. I don't feel like I can be authentically me. I'm bullied. I don't feel connected to my peers. I feel pressure. So our curriculum is designed around these core needs that we're hearing in this feedback from students, around ways to meaningfully connect to their peers and caring adults in their classroom, and ways to navigate the contemporary pressures of adolescence, the things that they're going through, the pressures that they're feeling. And it's wrapped around these design questions. Can school be a place for students to explore who they are and to feel accepted for who they are, where they can experience belonging, and where they can craft and design lives of meaning and purpose? So we do this through the lens of belonging and purpose. And our curriculum is broken up over 6 years. And again, we're geared toward middle school and high school. And so we really start with the foundation of belonging. We know that that's so critical in those middle school years, in that transition into high school, as students are trying to figure out, okay, where are my people? Like, where can I be myself? Who am I? You know, all of these questions. And then as they move into high school, they're starting to think about what's next, right? So what's after high school? How can I move purposefully? How can I build that agency within myself? How can I explore the world around me and expand my worldview and my lens? So these are some of the big questions that we support students in wrestling with. We do this through a digital platform and a paper toolkit, which is available to all of our schools. And so we are, as I mentioned at the top of the session, we are just launching our new school year, and we're super excited to be working with our schools, getting them on our digital platform, training our educators on not only implementing the Wayfinder curriculum, but we also put a lot of due diligence around supporting educators in implementing this, particularly around trauma-informed care and practices and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that you can't talk about belonging and identity and lived experience without focusing on those things and being really mindful in how we're supporting our educators and students and having those conversations. That's really important to us as well. So that's a little bit about us. We're really, again, excited to be here with you all today. We're excited to be a partner of CASEL and the Providers Council. As I mentioned before, we work really diligently to align to their core competencies. Really just grateful for the work that CASEL does in providing that structure and kind of being a leader and convener in the space. So we are, we know that there is a lot of work to be done, and there are a lot of people in this space who are doing amazing work. And we know that the results can be amazing and so impactful for students. And this is just a little bit of research that we've gleaned from different sources, and I'm sure you know this to be true depending on the spaces and places that you work. But we know that the impact for students, not only on mental health, but academic achievement as well, when they feel like they belong, when they feel like they have someone to connect to, their motivation increases, their self-efficacy increases, they have a stronger sense of identity, stress management, and obviously we know the converse of that as well, when students feel like they don't belong. And so we know that this work is important, it's large, and there's no better time to do it than right now. We know that the pandemic has exacerbated a lot of these things as students have felt greater isolation, been disconnected from their peers. And so this is just a pivotal moment and an opportune moment to be thinking about and rethinking how we support our students in school. And I want to just ground us as we move into the panel discussion on some shared language. I find that that's really helpful for participation and just shared understanding, and just wanted to ground us in this definition that Wayfinder uses around belonging. And I especially want to just draw your attention here to the last sentence. So practicing belonging means accepting, including, and valuing our own and each other's fullest selves. So there's also that responsibility in there around how we are responsible for cultivating cultures of belonging for our peers, for ourselves, and as educators. And then this last sentence here, without shifting or limiting who we are to meet expectations. Often belonging gets conflated with fitting in. And that's not inherently wrong. And I think fitting in is an important conversation. But what we often see in students is that they're contorting themselves or hiding different pieces of themselves that are really important to them in order to fit in. And we find that if students feel that they have to do that in order to find their place within school, that's not actual belonging. And so we're trying to say, how can we really push this idea of belonging and these cultures of belonging where students are showing up as their full selves and they don't feel like they have to contort who they are in order to feel like they belong in their school spaces. And so I really just wanted to ground us in that and talk about what it means to belong and what it means to just have these experiences of belonging and how we can support our students in that and utilizing this opportune moment to support our students in that way. So we never want it to be just us talking at people on any of these webinars or any of the experiences that we do. And so what we'd like to do is just kind of bring it back to a little bit of a discussion between Tristan, myself, and Corinn about our experiences and the way that we viewed belonging in schools and the opportune moment that we have right now to support our students in that way and the effects that we see academically, agency, and mental health wise. So Tristan, Corinn, thank you again for being on with us today. Thank you for chatting with me. I'm really excited about this rich discussion that I know we're about to have. And I actually just wanted to kick us off with just what does it mean to belong? I think that's such a big concept and we can come at it from a varying ways depending on our lived experience and what our experience has been with belonging. And so I really just want to ground us in this kind of more general question around what does it mean to belong? And Corinn, I'd love to maybe kick it off with you. I'm always about elevating our student voice in these spaces. And I'd love if you could just talk about your experiences in high school or in Step Year, the program at West Michigan Center for Arts and Technology that you and I met through, but maybe just talking about those experiences that you had of belonging and what those effects were for you.
Throughout high school, I kind of was a loner, but I did have a group of friends who I kept around me, but I didn't really feel like I was a part of the main group of friends. Like I was always the friend of the friends. And towards the end of high school, we all kind of dispersed. We all ended up not being friends. And it took me a while to I blamed myself for it. Like, oh, well, maybe I was a better friend here and there. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't showing enough affection towards my friends that they didn't want to be my friend anymore. And when I showed up at WMCAT, these group of people, my class, we just all bonded really well. We're still friends now. We still talk every now and again. And it made me realize that it wasn't my fault for being myself. It's that when you're not around people who are like you, you don't feel that connection. And when people aren't genuine with themselves, they can't be genuine with you either. So it's oftentimes when we find ourselves in high school where everyone's trying to be someone they're not because they all want to be popular or they want to be the coolest kid. They want to feel confident, but it's a facade. So oftentimes when we put up these facades, we often push ourselves back from gaining true friendship.
Thank you for that comment, Corinn. I love the comment you made around if people can't be genuine with themselves, they can't be genuine with you. I just think that foundation of understanding self first and feeling really comfortable with ourselves is just such a powerful thing. And that's the continual work. I don't think that ends after high school. I think as adults, you're still doing that work, right? And so I think that's such a powerful comment. And I also want to just throw a quick reminder out to folks that we'll be doing a larger Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop your questions or your comments in the Q&A box throughout the session. And we'll definitely be elevating those at the end of the session and doing a larger Q&A with folks in the audience. But please light up that Q&A with your questions. We'd love to have a wider conversation with everybody that's on today. And Corinn, could you talk a little bit about, you had said kind of the shift that you felt coming into the space at WMCAT. Can you talk about what were maybe just making it a little concrete for folks, like what were the sights, the sounds, the conversations, like what was it about that space and the people within those space that kind of created that shift for you?
I think the number one thing was the retreat. We all went on a retreat. So all the students went to this cabin and Brandy shared, and she made it okay for us to be vulnerable in that space. And she made it seem like if she can be vulnerable, we can be vulnerable as well. And she never belittled our experiences. She never tried to make our trauma seem less than what it was, because when we experience pain, it's true to ourselves, and we can't belittle someone else's pain because we've been through worse in our eyes. And other students as well, they began to share and they felt comfortable sharing. And me personally, I always encourage other people, like, hey, it's okay. Like, nobody's here judging you. And even if someone is judging you, I promise I got your back. I'm not gonna let them prevent you from hurting yourself in this space.
Thank you, Corinn. I appreciate that, and your leadership in that space, having witnessed that, and you being kind of that peer support, and also leading with vulnerability, so that your peers felt more comfortable in sharing and having those types of conversations. Tristan, I'd love to hear any of your feedback as a former administrator in schools, and what your own experience, just kind of your feedback around belonging and what those spaces can be and should be.
Right. I think as an educator, we have to remember that if we don't make the school a place of belonging, there are other external systems that want students to belong in a negative way. I think about my own experience. I was initiated into a gang in middle school. And I think about what that felt like. I felt like I wasn't attached to anyone or anybody. And I had some negative influences that made me feel like I belong. And so if my teachers weren't doing it at school and my parents wasn't doing it at home, and some third party comes and say, hey, you can be a part of us and this is what we'll offer you. And, and everything, the crime and the violence involved with that span of my life, I declined. I was kicked out of school. I was, it was just terrible. I went through a lot of traumatic experiences because I ended up belonging to something in which I really didn't belong, right? And I think Corinn touched on that. She talked about like true friendships. Like when you really don't belong, it's hard for you to discern like true friendships. And then I also think about what it feels like to belong in a positive space. And when my father's house burned down and I was about to drop out of school, I had some teachers at this particular school I was attending to really foster this nurturing environment and make sure that the school was a place for me to show up as my authentic self. I was broken. I was depressed. I was, suicidal. Like, I was struggling with so much, and for teachers to come out the woodworks. And it's funny, when the strictest teacher at the school started loving on you, the strictest, and, the teacher that, that normally doesn't go out of their way to make those connections, start making those connections. And you start seeing this sense of like, okay, like things could get better and I got people on my side. And in the midst of this, something happened. In the midst of me feeling belonging, then they start implanting seeds like, oh, you're smart. Oh, you're intelligent. Oh, okay. I see. Have you ever thought about going to college? And I'm like, no, like this is the first time. And I'm in the 11th grade, like in the second semester of my 11th grade year. And someone finally was like, you should definitely think about going to college. Why hasn't anyone said anything to you? And I think that was due to like my behavior was always terrible, but my grades were always really good because I was the student after I finished my work and you didn't have an extension assignment. I'm turning this whole class up. And so like, it was just, to be in the space. And so when I think about cultivating belonging, I think about number one, allowing students and staff members to show up as their authentic selves, and two, accepting those individuals and those people for who they are, and still valuing them as a member of whatever community that's there. And then the third thing is making sure you invest into them, because I think one of the things about me feeling belonging was then they were kind of like hyping me up a little bit, like finding sparks, like you're good at this, you're good at this, you can do this, you can do this. And this was the first time I was 16 years old, and the first time I ever heard adults really like talk about what I'm good at. And that's so crazy to know that I was able to go through a whole educational system and no one be able to give me and foster that sense. And as an educator, I saw it. Like, some kids go a whole school day without hearing one positive thing from adults. Like, how do we make them feel like they belong? And I think practically as an educator, it was simple as knowing students' name, calling them by their names. The second thing was, making eye contact, commenting about something, commenting about their presence. The third thing, checking in. The fourth thing, like, how are you speaking into their lives? How are you speaking into, their assistance? Are you fostering any sparks? How are you igniting their passion? And I think that's how some of the things we really should think about as educators in terms of fostering belonging.
Tristan, thank you so much for that. And I think what I hear from you when you talk about your experience is that often that shift that happened when you started to feel like you belonged more in the school, when you had that educator that checked in on you, when you were able to connect in different places. Because I think at the root of that, it was you started talking about, if you're not finding it in healthy or safe spaces, you're going to find that somewhere, right? And so
It's going to be found.
yeah, exactly. And then that shift that happens, that once you started believing that you were going to college and that you could go to college, the motivation and all of that took place. And I just think that that's such a beautiful thing. And I think that we don't often think about our sense of agency when we feel like we belong, and how we feel like we can achieve more or do different things, how our vision of ourself shifts. And I want to kind of bring up that question and kick it back over to you, Corinn, and just thinking about our sense of agency. One of the things that we often say is that in order to feel like you can impact the world around you, or that you can meaningfully contribute to the world, or that you have a pathway that is right for you, you have to feel like you have a place within the world. You have to have that rootedness, that connectivity. And Corinn, I'm just wondering, as your feelings of belonging increased and you got connected to peers who you were able to kind of share with and commiserate with and learn from and build up, how did that affect your sense of agency and your feelings around what you could do and what you could accomplish?
The best analogy I can think of is when you go into a restaurant and you see a bunch of other dirty tables. You notice that they're dirty, but that's not your job. You don't work there. That's not your restaurant. You don't care about it. You sit at your table and you enjoy your meal. And a lot of times when you become the owner of this restaurant, now you are thinking, I have to clean this table. These floors need to be swept. And once you belong in a space, now you care about it. And once you can cultivate that care in someone, you can see, you don't have to tell them anything, because once they care, they're going to take the steps and the actions to cultivate a proper space that they feel comfortable in. And they're going to move forward in ways that are beneficial not only to themselves, but their peers around them, to make this situation easier for them, to make this situation more acclimatable for people to feel like they can also join in and help clean up the space and make it feel like a community. A perfect example, my neighborhood, we got a garden, and it used to be an empty lot. Nobody cared about it. Walk straight through it to cut through the trains, and now everybody partake in the community garden. It's they take students from the school and they buy their groceries there. And I feel like once you cultivate this care in people, that they can cultivate other people to care. And once you get enough people to care, you can make changes in society and your community and your friendships. And that's how me personally, ways that I felt that I belonged with SwimCat. I just ran headfirst into it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know who these people are, but I'm going to try to make them feel comfortable so that I can be comfortable. Because if they don't feel comfortable, I'm going to sense the tension. I'm going to sense that everybody else is uncomfortable. Once they're comfortable, I can also be comfortable, and I can relax and I can ease myself. And that's extremely important, especially if you want to better yourself. Because once you care enough about yourself, you begin to care about other people. And that's secondhand. Because once you care about your own life, you can care about other people's lives, because you recognize that that's someone's daughter, that's someone's son, That's someone to someone.
Right. That's amazing. That is amazing.
I agree. And I'm going to use that restaurant metaphor moving
Yeah, I
forward.
know, right?
That landed with me. That landed with me. And I'm wondering, Tristan, before I kick it over to you, I wonder if I could just ask Corinn, maybe just to make it again a little, just ground our audience maybe in some examples around, and especially thinking about, you know, you're mentioning like taking ownership, right? And I think what also comes along with that, when we think about, you know, core competencies in SEL is around like our interpersonal relationships and things of that nature. And so I also think about, you know, knowing where to go to ask for support. I think that's also a big thing too, as you feel more like you belong, like you feel like you not only do you have people that you can go to, but you know how to seek out the support that you need. And I'm just wondering, as that grew for you, as your belonging and connectivity increased and that grew, how did that affect your post-secondary journey? So what is, I know when you came into to step year, the program at WMCAT, it was kind of like, I'm not sure what's next. You know, you had some passions and some skills, but you weren't quite sure how those were going to align. And I'm just wondering how that belonging and agency, how that affected what you've decided to do since that program and since graduation.
Well, one of the biggest things that I did after WMCAT is my grandmother passed away. And so me and my family, we started a foundation for thyroid cancer. And I did the artwork for our logo. And the biggest thing is when you lose family, it changes the dynamic that you see in life, and you question how you show up in the world. And my grandma was my person. So losing her it made me take a moment to reflect on who I was as a person, how I showed up, how she showed up in the world. And people ask about her, I have to tell her, oh, my grandmother is, we got a thyroid cancer survivor. It made me think about how she influenced my life. She was the person that always gave me that support that I needed. She was always encouraging me to do my art and always encouraging me to be better, because she saw better in me than I was often putting out sometimes.
Wow.
Ooh, I'm getting emotional.
It's okay.
Good time.
It's okay.
It's not even a sad emotion. Like, just remembering her makes me want to be who she was. She was always reaching out and giving to other people. And we had a gala for her, and we are raising $5,000 for Monte Cancer Center. And I did a painting that we raffled off, and somebody will show it to you eventually. But I did this painting that reminded me of her. It showed how she gave to the world and the importance of giving to other people when it's authentic, when it's real, when it's something that's worth value. Because you can give anything to anyone, but when you give them something that they can value, something that they can cherish, then it makes them reflect back on that. Like, there was people who cared about me. When those dark times hit, you can remember that there are people that care about me, and there are people that I can help, and I can make them care about me as well.
Corinn, I think that's so
powerful.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that experience with us, and thank you, just that stirring kind of tribute and just elevating your grandmother and who she was to you. And when you told me about what you've been able to do, I think for me that was especially powerful, because when you and I first met, there was kind of this stirring around art, right? You're a very talented, beautiful artist, and you weren't, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from what I gathered from our conversations, you weren't quite sure how that could connect in any sort of like career pathway, or how you could like, how can I make something of this now, you know? And through kind of your own exploration, and I was really cool to see you kind of exploring what that could look like, and then having these additional relationships in your life through the peers that were in step year and other folks that you got connected to. And I'm not saying that step year was the thing, or your exploration through Wayfinder was the thing that made this happen, but it kind of all culminated together And now that you're using your art to contribute to something that is meaningful to you, right? You're using your art to, you're raffling it off and selling it and, doing all of these things to support this foundation that you were able to start with your family. And how beautiful is that to kind of come around this realization that you have a place, you have this like purposeful direction, and you're able to contribute to that because you felt like, oh, this restaurant is mine now, right? Like that, using your metaphor. I told you I'm gonna keep using it. You were like, this restaurant is mine now. And here's what I can do. Here's how I can contribute. Here's how I can honor my grandmother's memory using the skill and talent that I have. And just being able to really elevate that. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing. And I wonder, Tristan, from your perspective, what is the role of educators, of caring adults in the lives of our students to help them kind of build that this restaurant is mine, right? The agency, that ownership, and to make them feel like you have to feel like you belong there first before you feel like you have ownership. And how do we build that within our students? And I just love to hear from you around your thoughts on how administrators can do that and what best practices maybe you used or have seen before.
Right. And I think a lot of what I've used came from my experience, right? Like a part of what I did as a teacher and administrator came from, like, I knew I wanted to make students feel like they belonged in the classroom, because I remember how it felt not to belong. I knew I wanted to make sure I watched how I taught to kids, because I remember when teachers talked at me sideways. I knew I wanted to make sure that they felt inclusive and included in a learning environment, because I remember walking into a classroom and hearing classroom rules and immediately feeling small and invisible. And so I think the first thing is the teacher themselves have to be owner of those restaurants. Like, they have to be able to say, like, I'm a part of this community. I have to feel like I belong, at least in this classroom. Like, and so a lot of times we disconnect ourselves from students automatically, maybe because we have students that we don't connect race-wise. Maybe we have students that we don't connect because of socioeconomic status and the way we were raised. And so we create these barriers in our minds that inevitably play out in how we deliver services to kids. And the research says, especially when we go to John Hattie and this visible learning research, it talks about teacher efficacy. And teacher efficacy is basically being able to believe that you can accomplish a goal. And so I feel like when we step into the classroom, we have to believe that belonging and purpose and making sure the things we do in the classroom is like a priority. And as individuals, regardless of our administrative structure, we have the ability and control to garner that type of support within on the classroom level. And then I feel like, and one of the things for me, like going to college on a scholarship, being able to graduate and teach, and ultimately I guess like one of the things that comes out of this is, does it work? And I mean, when I was in the classroom and I implemented some of these practices, I was working in a school that was underperforming for 18 years. We were 1 year away from being taken over by the state. Everyone was all in, skin in the game, trying to make sure the things we did was purposeful. And one of the things we implemented and I led in the science department was just building culture, making sure kids belong, us having a sense of purpose. And we started off the classrooms with culture building and things of that, and affirmations and mindfulness and things of that sort, to foster that building of identity. And one of the things we saw is that all of our students met their growth goal, and it exceeded their growth goal. And then within 2 years, we were off the improvement required list. And also a big part of that was the ability to, really help students and teachers around the district that were trying to foster that sense of belonging. So there's a huge impact and implication on the work we do as educators. And, I just go back to what my grandma used to say, and she says, the power of life and death is in your tongue. And having the ability to speak life and speak purpose and speak belonging and existence and inclusion into what we do can have a impact that's beyond ourselves. And I just want to point this out, Brandy. As an educator, we see so many students, and it's very rare that after a student graduates that we then get to converse with them, like they come back. And if you ever want to have a testament to how powerful a relationship is and your effectiveness in building that sense of inclusion and belonging, the test is simple. Do they come back? Like, I came back to that school after I graduated from college, and I'm here because of y'all, the work y'all did in this school. And it's a testament that Corinn is on this call talking about where she is in her life. And I think the interaction you all had in that space, I mean, that is so powerful to come back around and say, that was special. And sometimes it's not the thing, but it's like the spark. It is like the brink. It's something that helps someone get over the hill. And I really appreciate Corinn sharing like where you at. Like, I get emotional because so many of our students have those stories. And as sure enough as I look at you, I think about the kids that don't have a person. I think about the kids that don't have a Brandy. I think in my case, I think about the kids that don't have a Miss Solomon, a Miss Pat. And I can call out those teachers' names because they had that impact on my life. And so, this is important work because, as sure enough, we can sit here and have this conversation. There's a kid that's going to enter our school doors in the next couple of days that have that same potential, but they don't have a person. They don't have a space. They don't feel like they belong. I have to put on this mask. I have to code switch when I come into this classroom, because if I don't, I'm not going to be successful. Like those are heavy burdens to bear, especially when you're trying to navigate. I'm struggling with reading. I'm struggling with doing math. I don't tuck in my shirt. I got to trim my facial hair. I got to cut off my dreads. We can do this, but we have to start tearing down some of those barriers so students can live and be in their life's potential, and not trying to impart what we want for their lives on them, but trying to help them find their way. And if we do that, then I feel like we're in a better predicament. When you see these kids cross the stage, it is amazing to look at some of the students that cross the stage and they look around like, now what? But to instill a sense of purpose and belonging into them, like that gives them a whole new level of confidence and a way to navigate and traverse life, that stretches far beyond academia, right? And so I'm just, we can do it, and we have to do it, because if we don't, there are so many kids that are going to our school that they're gonna be lost.
Thank you, Tristan, for that powerful, I almost call it a testimony, right? I mean, you got your bow tie on, so I'm almost like,
right.
And it looks like folks in the chat are really resonating with it as well. And so I want to, as we are kind of nearing our close, I want to make sure that we're uplifting any questions or that are coming from either the Q&A box or the chat, so that we can have time to kind of continue this conversation before we close out. Anything coming up for folks? And as we're working to elevate those questions, I just wanted to share this. Just so everybody kind of has a concrete example of the beautiful work that Corinn does. So this is actually the painting that she was able to raffle off for the foundation that she and her family started for her grandmother. And so very talented artist. And I just wanted to make sure that we kind of just contextualized that for everyone and showcase your work, because it's beautiful and it's powerful. And we're really happy that you're doing something that you love and finding that meaningful pathway. So thank you, Corinn. And yeah, let's lift up some of those questions from the chat as we close.
Sure, I will go through some of the ones that have come in, and we've got some questions about your curriculum. So does the curriculum account for students with disabilities or neuro differences?
We do have in our facilitation guides, we have a lot of tips for facilitators on how they can contextualize or how they can tweak for context. And so we do have some of those kind of tips in there about how you can tweak, or how you can, like, there's this level of understanding about how you might be able to shift it to make sure that at least these two core things are understood, and here's different ways that you can approach that learning. The curriculum is not specifically geared toward those groups, but we do have some tips in the facilitation guides around that. And we work really closely with our school partners as they're coming on board to understand their school, their students, what they're seeking, what their goals are. And we work with them to decide maybe what level of the curriculum might be best for that particular group of students. Okay,
great. And just a side note, we did have somebody ask Corinn if that artwork behind you was yours. So we're really happy, Brandy, that you shared some of Corinn's beautiful work so we could see it. Thank you for that. Also about the curriculum, within it, do you teach students how to connect who have not been taught the emotional and behavioral skills, meaning the SEL literacy of connecting?
We do, and that really starts at the beginning of the year. And so before we dive into any content, any sort of lessons, we really just focus on what is belonging, what does it mean to belong, what do those relationships look like, what is that skill set or those tools that you bring to the table. We have lessons around exploring our emotions and asking those questions about how can I respond and not react. And so we have a lot of those activities that come at the beginning of the year to help set that foundation for students. So as we move through the year and they kind of start to dip their toes a little bit deeper into the waters of our content and start to have quiet conversations around what does it mean to be a good friend for someone? What does it mean to form secure attachments with people? They already have that foundational understanding.
Great, getting everybody on the same page, like you did for us, Brandy, at the beginning of the conversation.
Definitely, yeah, a lot of norm setting, language setting, community agreements, those types of things.
Yeah. Tristan, you mentioned code switching, and we had someone ask if you could just elaborate a little bit more about authenticity versus the need to code switch.
Sure. So when I'll start with code switching. When I have to show up to a space that's not built for me, that's not conducive to me being myself in that space, I then have to adapt to survive in that space. It's interesting, I have to use the word survival when talking about education. Like, I have to adapt to survive in education versus me coming as a student and in the space that I am and in the environment that I experience outside of these school walls and being provided tools necessary to navigate. So we're talking about, how do I regulate my emotions? Like, if I'm always mad and I'm in fights and I'm getting discipline referrals out the wazoo, how or like what type of space in the school is teaching me to, regulate my emotions versus, don't fight, Mr. Love. You can't fight in this school, blah, blah, blah. And so in order for me to show up to school, I have to turn this button on and off. And while the dangers of code switching is because it helps me survive at school, but outside of school, it doesn't give me tools to survive life. And so, yes, I know I can't fight at school and I need to suppress my anger. But what kids typically do at that point is say, well, hey, so after the school bell ring, we're going to meet down the street. And what we notice then is that more dangerous situations typically happen. So when I think about code switching and authenticity, I think about allowing students to show us and bring their selves into that space and giving them tools to better themselves, so then they realize and be able to regulate how they behave and navigate different spaces.
Thank you. That was a good explanation in a short amount of time. So thanks for tackling that that topic for us.
Yeah.
So this is another big question, and we are running out of time, but we can at least make a start at it. This participant is from a town that has a very long history of racism. And while the town is working hard for more diversity and inclusion, she's saying that many of her students don't even realize that the things that they've heard from their parents or grandparents are hurtful, and her students of color struggle to fit in, not necessarily from blatant racism as much as a difficulty to find connection. How do you connect students and start these conversations that don't make my students of color feel like they're being even further separated by highlighting their uniqueness? Big question.
Corinn, do you, I'd love to, I'm sure Tristan has some great
Of course.
best practices, but Corinn, I'd love to hear if you have any ideas just from a student perspective about what students might want to see in those spaces from their school leadership and their teachers.
Oftentimes it requires for teachers to teach about Black people or people of color in a way that's not conducive to only talking about their trauma and their struggles, uplifting them, talking about Black poets and other things to show not even just the students of color that they can be more than just their skin, but showing those students who have been taught that Black people are ignorant or whatever, that they are more than just what their parents have taught them to believe these people are. Not only that, I believe that oftentimes people, when they're trying to help, we don't notice the microaggressions that we hold when we speak to people. So I think that's a very important when we should learn those microaggressions. Oh, you're so smart. For who? Oh, I didn't expect you to know this. I didn't expect those little things like that make a student feel invalidated when you don't expect them to know these certain things that you would expect another student to know. You wouldn't expect them to like certain things. And when you kind of yourself don't immerse them in the curriculum and make them feel seen in that educational system, those students tend to shy away from even participating or believing that you even care about what they are going on. And even though it might not be blatant racism that you see, it doesn't mean that they don't experience it, because those ideologies and implicit biases are already in those children's brain from so young. So I think trying to navigate them, to corral them to change the way they think and help them see that it's not exactly what their parents say it is.
That's so good.
Tristan, did you want to add anything onto that?
Yeah,
so Corinn, you really did a beautiful job.
Nailed it. And nailed it. And the only thing I'll add to that will be from a district and school level perspective. We have to make sure our practices and our procedures and our policies, are not there to kind of widen that divide. Like examining our disciplinary practices. In my experience, a lot of our disciplinary practices have a large role in that. The second thing is we have to examine our school culture. What are we doing to foster a sense of belonging across the campus? If we're not doing that, then we're playing into whatever environmental factors the students are coming in our school with. That's going to create our school culture. And if you're trying to change that school culture, we have to really evaluate how are we making all students feel belong, and how do all students purposefully engage at the school level? And if there's no, and I'll just say this tidbit. Normally all the, Black students, we got these teachers, in my experience, we had teachers with strong classroom management skills, and the teachers that didn't have strong classroom management, and the students that didn't have and the teacher and the students that did not have teachers with strong classroom management skills, they were put in another course. And so to be able to look at from a district level, what are our practices that may be playing into the role of what the implicit biases, you know, that are going on in the community? We have to evaluate that.
Well, we are unfortunately at the end of our time. Brandy, I think you have a few little wrap-up pieces before we close out. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. So, you know, as Tristan references school culture, and as we think about getting back in the classroom, one of the things that we wanted to offer everyone in the audience, and we can pass this along to Castle to distribute to attendees, but it's a link to a deck of ours that is kind of just back to school activities that we can do in our classrooms, short period of time, 5, 10, 20 minutes, to just kind of help cultivate those relationships and that belonging in your classroom. Of course, there's a lot of things to be thinking about at the systems level, but these are just small ways to help you get started. So we're really excited to offer that to everyone on the call. And we just wanted to close out as we opened up the space. It's really important to close out our space today too. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Corinn and Tristan for all of your valuable insight. And thank you to PeerEdge for their sponsorship and for gifting us this space. And thank you for all of you. And we'd like to just close out this time with inviting folks to drop into the chat a spark, a stretch, or a struggle. So something you realized or learned today, maybe a way that you stretched yourself in terms of your participation, or maybe your thinking, or if there's something that you wanted to drop in as a struggle, that's welcome too. But we'd love to see those kind of populating the chat as we close on our time together. Thank you all so much. We're grateful to be here with you all today.
Well, and we are so grateful to have had the three of you with us and really appreciate your sharing all of your personal experiences and your expertise and opening up your hearts to us. This was just a really powerful conversation, and I am sad that we have to end it and say goodbye. But so thank you to Wayfinder for being here, and thank you very much to PeerEdge for offering Wayfinder their space today. Again, PeerEdge is a sponsor of the SEL Exchange, Castle's SEL Exchange, that's coming up on October 14th. And again, registration will open for the summit next week. So if you haven't already signed up to receive notification about that, we encourage you to go to the URL on your screen, and we'll also share that URL with you by email, and you can sign up to be notified when registration opens. We will be sending you a link to the recording as well as the resources that Brandy mentioned. So keep an eye on your email. Most likely tomorrow we'll get that out. If not, it will be Friday at the absolute latest. Also included in that email will be your certificate of attendance. So lots of good stuff coming your way. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Brandy, Tristan, Corinn. Wonderful to be with you. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.